security being compromised. Hungary saying that the advisory opinion that you speak of would directly contribute to the escalation of the conflict. Similar sentiments that were expressed by America, and we know America is now being seen as the defense lawyer for this Zionist state of Israel.
Absolutely, and I think it's a lot of semantics to stop justice being served. Right now, the Palestinian people are. There is no war going on. There's just military aggression against one party who's now facing a famine. There's a host of diseases. I mean, yesterday, the Al Jazeera headlines were that the hospitals are now a hotbed for diseases. The amount of children that are starving and passing away, actually passing away due to a lack of food. So there isn't a war, and I think that the US and Hungary as well try to submit that this is an ongoing conflict and an ongoing war. That's not the case. We have an oppressor and we have an oppressed in terms of what's happening in Palestine right now. And the people are so, they're facing so much of famine and so many humanitarian inflictions that by no means is this a war between two countries anymore, which is, I think, what the world needs to remember. There's just a people that are undergoing complete annexation by Israel.
Yes. Now, we've seen the two-state solution coming up over and over again. We've also seen Russia talking about a negotiated two-state solution with an independent and viable Palestine state. But we've also seen the reaction come out of Israel, where Netanyahu has basically thrown this right out of the window, saying that there will be no Palestinian state. There was an overwhelming majority in the Knesset as well, I think 99 out of 120 votes. So saying that, the rest of the world should not be prescribing to Israel in terms of a Palestinian state. So, yeah, again, you've got the submissions coming through to the ICJ. Israel, again, a law unto itself.
No, I think it's quite ridiculous to be talking about a two-state solution at this stage, in my opinion. I, we are so far from that. We are just watching the annexation of a people, and the Israeli uh, officials have made it absolutely clear that they are not interested in a two-state solution. When the other submissions were made to the court yesterday, including the UAE submission, the submission by Egypt, they very clearly said Netanyahu is not coming to the table. He does not want to negotiate. He does not want a Palestinian state. He does not want a two-state solution. He wants to wipe out the people of Palestine. And it's so clear. We see official statements all the time. We see the Palestinians being called animals. One of the US Congress members said that this week. He said that we should wipe them all out. All of the Palestinians or all of Hamas should be wiped out. How can you do that? How can you go and give out statements saying that entire people must be wiped out? And I think we need to just take a step back again and think about Hamas in that way, because the world is being made to believe that Hamas is this terrorist organization that was formed, on the basis of being an armed group and to come out and just wage war, kill people. No. Hamas is a democratically elected group. They consist of doctors, they consist of teachers, they consist of ministers, they consist of. Hamas has parks and schools and doctors and educated people, and these people are now being called for by the United States and by Israel to just wipe out an entire people, including the women, the children, the people who are serving the NGO. It's ridiculous. And I think there was a quote yesterday by one of the Israel ministers of settlements, Oret Struk, and I'll just read out the quote to you. It says, "The entire land of Israel is ours, and we belong to it, and for this reason, there will be no Palestinian state on the territory of Israel. Because there is no such thing as a Palestinian people, and there is no such nation." They're making it very clear for the world. So, how can you come to the World Court and speak about a two state solution when the party, the aggressor, is not willing to give up, or not even give up, is not just willing to realize the rights or to humanize the people that they've occupied?
Yes, Aisha. In fact, I saw that bit that you just spoke about the Israeli settlement minister yesterday. But again, looking at these statements about permanently about wiping out the Palestinians. Now, this was the strong argument that South Africa had initially presented when they took up this case at the ICJ, and we still see a lot of these remarks coming through, these inflammatory remarks, and Israel tried to obviously shy away from this, saying, it was taken out of context, and all of that. But we just see these type of statements being made repeatedly, and it's an ongoing issue at this point in time.
Absolutely, and that's why I keep echoing that if you don't know what Israel is about now, then you're choosing not to know. And if you make it out to be that you're not sure of the intentions, or that they might be there for a two-state solution, or they may be there to foster peace, and some of the submissions, for example, that submission of the United States in court to say that we need to recognize the Israeli people, we can't withdraw occupation forces, you're just furthering a war at this point. Israel has become a law unto themselves. They don't even take direction from the United States, which is their biggest ally. But even when the United States says, Rafah, hold on, you're going a bit far with Rafah, so can you just back down a bit? They say, we will not. When the highest court of the world, which is referred to as the World Court, sets down provisional measures, Israel says, we're not going to recognize that. So they only recognize anything that's in favor of them. They recognize anybody willing to work with them. And now the world has to sit and say, how much of power have we given Israel? And now we have to backtrack in terms of boycotts, in terms of military assistance, because unfortunately, and it's sad to say, the world has just let Israel go wild.
Yes, but also it's quite interesting how each country has been making their submissions, Aisha, because this is not only about Israel on trial, it is also international humanitarian law which is on trial. It is also the UN Charter that is on trial. And what I found quite interesting is even a country like Guyana, for instance, talking about permanent occupation is a military conquest. Because when we're talking about a country or an occupying power that temporarily occupies a place. But in this case, yeah, this is permanent. This is annexation, and this is the reason why I am saying that the UN Charter and international humanitarian law is also under trial.
I think, even with our discussion yesterday with Professor Nidal, we keep coming back to the fact that something is failing our legal system. You can't have UN resolutions that can't be passed because of one member that always has a veto power. When 13 members are calling for a ceasefire, that means that of the 15 members, 13 members see the humanitarian crisis. 13 members understand that what's being done is a direct infringement of humanitarian law, of the Charter, of international law, of customary law in wars, and yet you have one member who can just come and veto it. And obviously, if that's how the law works, then you'll always have a member protecting their own interests at the expense of the annexation of a people. And what's the purpose of law if it doesn't protect the vulnerable, if it doesn't give you measures to protect the vulnerable when they most need protecting? So we do have to re-examine the way the laws are made and who they are actually benefiting. But I think that that's already happening. There is so much of legal talk about this veto power, and there's so much of talk to the court directly. When people are making submissions to the court, yesterday, especially in submissions, they were very strong in saying the court has failed Palestine so far. And they were very strong in saying that the UN, the United Nations, the General Assembly, the Security Council have all failed Palestine. So there's a different shift in the world about the legal system that we follow. And as you mentioned, Guyana and like small countries are coming up and saying, we are not going to stand for this. We understand what self determination is about, and we understand what the Palestinian people are facing. And they actually stood up in court and they said, it is wrong. If you are on the fence at this point, it is wrong. If you are talking about a two-state solution, you know that Netanyahu does not want to come to the table to negotiate. So you have those moments in court that are very sad, like when we had the UN representative for Palestine who broke down. And then you have those moments in court where you have immense pride for the smaller countries coming to the table and just saying it like it is.
Well, the line has been drawn and it's very, very clear. And I think all of it is obviously coming out. And I'm sure today is going to be another interesting day. But just before we get to today, just very quickly, your comment on France. Now, we know that France has been the home of Islamophobia for a very, very long time. But looking at a country like France, but France again is talking about, although the policies and the practices of Israel have been illegal under international law, they already starting to talk about restitution. They're talking about compensation. Now, Gaza obviously has been blown and bombed into the Stone Age, and now you have this coming through at France from France in their submission.
Look, I think reparations have been mentioned more than once by the submissions by the different countries, and it is important. We need to think about that. Once we have a ceasefire, we need that entire Gaza to be rebuilt. We have displaced Palestinians, we have injured Palestinians, we have starving Palestinians. Obviously, this has affected the economy. We don't have those universities anymore, those hospitals, the entire infrastructure, schools, UN schools, everything has been razed. So it's important to talk about reparations and about restitution, things like that. But it is so premature right now. It's so premature because right now people are living day to day. They're just fighting to get through the day alive. So it is important, and I think it's good to include it in legal submissions because there's a long fight ahead. It's not just the ceasefire. The ceasefire is just the beginning of this fight for Gaza and for Palestine as a whole.
Let's talk about today. What can be expected?
Okay, so we have quite a few submissions today. China, which has come out very strongly in support of Palestine and has actually slammed the US for vetoing once again. And then we have Iran, Iraq. It will be really interesting to hear the submissions. We also have submission from Japan and Jordan, which Kuwait as well, Lebanon, Libya, Luxembourg. So quite a few submissions, and the final submission today is from Mauritius. It will be interesting to listen to the submissions to the court, especially some of the Arab countries, which, as we say, come under fire for, um, supporting, paying lip service to Palestine, but sometimes not doing any more. But it will be nice to hear from Lebanon, especially with what's going on there and the aggression that's going on there. And I think a lot of times it gets put under the radar because of the severity of what's happening in Gaza. But there are innocent civilians losing their life in Lebanon as well.
Well, Aisha, I know you've got a busy day ahead, but looking forward to catching up with you once again tomorrow. But for now, Jazakallah for your time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Barakallahu feek. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Aisha Vaid, Salam Media's legal reporter at The Hague, just recapping day 3 and day 4 today, what can be expected. The time is just gone 8:26. We come back, we will be focusing on budget 2024.